Now, in our first video chat segment of the week, we're examining the question, will there be enough jobs in the green economy? Who better than to get back on the show than the labour market intelligence guru, Andy Durman of Emsi, which recently merged with the consultancy firm Burning Glass. And to give us that public service view on net zero and what it might all mean for our workforces is a Federation of Awarding Bodies new board member and managing director of SFJ Awards, Candice Miller. Welcome to you both. Fantastic to see you.
Hi there,
Hi, Andy. Hi, John.
Andy, let's come to you first. I read a really interesting article you penned for FE News, which is a fascinating jobs vacancy analysis of 366 so-called green jobs mapped to local enterprise areas, I think over the period of the lockdowns. Tell us what you found in that piece of research.
Yeah, hi Tom. Yeah, interesting work. And one of the great challenges, of course, when you try and do analysis of the green economy is actually defining it in the first place, because it's not exactly the easiest thing to understand, and there is no set real definition. So we took a look at some of the key titles, job titles that are really clearly focused on very sustainability and renewability in the labour market. Found around about 360 from our library of 75,000 job titles, and what we've seen is strong growth. Certainly, despite the pandemic, where a lot of labour market activity fell away, green jobs have certainly held up quite well relative, and based on that definition, have seen really strong growth as we've started coming out the other side of the pandemic. So clearly, a big driver to the new normal and the future of the economy.
Yeah, well, let's unpack what that future of the economy from a net zero perspective might mean shortly. But Candice, do you think in the public's mind, green jobs currently are about those wind turbine installers and electric car technicians? Yet, if we are to reach net zero by 2050, surely every job and every sector, including the public services you work with, are going to have to embrace this low carbon revolution, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, Tom, a lot of things are already in play within the public sectors of public services. I mean, you think about it, the NHS, policing, probations and prisons, all aspects of the public sector services are already trying their best to green their systems, not necessarily change their jobs, but make sure that they've got the behaviour change going on and they've got the innovations coming through that mean that they are less polluting, more sustainable as they go forward. So there's a lot of change already happening.
Yeah, and of course the pandemic itself, not that this was the grand design, but it's, I mean, at some levels, particularly if you're an office worker, this has been quite a green revolution in itself, hasn't it, over the past couple of years? Obviously it's not one we planned, but there's no doubt, is there, Andy, as we try, as you say, get back to what is probably now the new normal rather than the old normal, but certainly less commuting, different ways of working. You know, the idea actually of you having to live within 10, 20, 30, 40 miles even of your job and commuting, I mean, that's going to look very old hat, isn't it? When effectively, if you can work over Zoom and all these other technology platforms. And I think, you know, got to be clear, this isn't, you know, not everybody can live in that kind of working environment. We're still going to need the service sector. We're still going to need these very people orientated jobs. I mean, in your sectors, Candice, there's no two ways about it. You've got to go to a hospital. We need people in our fire stations and ambulance stations and what have you. But Andy, what's your sort of reflection then? I mean, when we look at the so-called the future skills element of all of this, and I was really, again, interested to read in FE News, Bewick Keep's recent article, and he seemed to be very much going after the idea that the skills are in the level 4+ area when we talk about green jobs. How sensible is that?
Well, there's clearly going to be plenty of skills in the level 4+, and when you think about a lot of the job titles at the green jobs level, quite a few of them are coming through at the higher end of the skill spectrum. What I would say, though, is to Candice's point, I think it's not just a case of looking at green jobs. The whole economy is greenifying, and we're greenifying most actually. So further analysis that we're currently doing, and this is sort of in train, and we'll be sharing more of this through FE News and other channels, is actually trying to start to think about the green economy at the skill level rather than necessarily the job level or the industry level. Traditionally, we think of it as you in your opening, renewables and EV production, electronic vehicle production.
That's right, we do, yeah.
you know, the next layer down are the jobs, sustainability and renewable jobs. But actually, the real green revolution is happening at that skills level, much like the tech revolution and the creative revolution happened very much at the skill level.
That's right. You know, it's a bit like digital skills, isn't it? You know, it almost becomes just so ubiquitous over time that there isn't a single job that's not not touched by that. Candice, what's your reflections on this level 4+? Because it's not just very learned professors, and indeed he's on the government's productivity board and now the joint green task force between BEIS and DFE. Are we not in danger here? Because you see it in quite a bit of language now coming out of government that we're sort of prioritising level 4+ skills and forgetting that any ladder of opportunity has got those first couple of important rungs on it as well, hasn't it?
No,
and the skills ladder is no different.
Totally. I mean, if you think about the impact of level 2 is the route in to so many occupations, so many professions, and it's that's not to decry the need for highly skilled, highly proficient occupations at level 4, 5 and above that are directly connected into the changes that are happening as a result of the greenifying, if that's the right word, I think, good word, Andy, of the economy. But actually, what do we really need? We're going to need people to start at school level, I would suggest, having some of that behavioural change, some of the attitudinal change that needs to happen. And they need to have access points into all manner of jobs. Andy, you said something that I completely agree with. This is not just about green jobs. This is about green awareness. It's about green skills, and it's green skills that permeate everything, every single sector. Now, I'm very familiar with what's happening in the primary public services, the health services, fire and rescue, policing, and so on. However, even if you look at tourism, hospitality, there are multitudinal layers of skill and understanding that are needed there in order to deliver services in a more sustainable way that allow tourism, retail, hospitality, etc., to come back and flourish. So all across the piece, we need skills that are related to green activity, not just jobs. And it would be, to my mind, a nonsense to think that we can only start that at the top levels. We don't. We start it at the bottom.
Yeah, Andy, we've got to join up supply and demand here, haven't we? And also, I would have thought we've got to get things right when it comes to skills bill, second reading this week, local skills improvement plans. I mean, it'd be good to get your reflections from you, Andy, but also you, Candice, about, you know, how do we make sure that every single one of those plans has a thread running through it, a narrative, and importantly, an action plan running through it that is about, and I love Andy's new terminology, let's talk about greenifying the jobs of the future. How do we do that through these so-called LSIPs, a new acronym we're having to get used to?
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's complicated, of course, and it's complex, and this is all very new and shiny to us. I mean, we're just only really starting to see this coming through in the data that we're tracking. But I think it's a lot like the tech, as you say, the digital and the tech debate right now. We just know it runs right through. So so to some extent, you can almost think it much like English and maths. We can almost think of these skills as foundational to work, foundational to just working and living in an evolving economy. So I think it is good to highlight specific jobs right now, because it gives us a focal point, of course, and we can look to those jobs to understand, well, what skills do they need, and then start to think about where else do they fit within the wider economy. But you know, I would say as a leader of a labor market analytics firm, we've got to look to the data. The data has a big role to play in helping us unpick that. But you know, the data will only tell us so much, and respond to how employers are describing work. So how do we talk to employers, and how do we educate back into these into the employer community to understand where those skills lies? I think there's a lot of hard work to be done, but there are plenty of levers to pull, for sure, as you described.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give you a little plug as well, I see Emsi's hosting a webinar on the 23rd of June on this whole question of green jobs and skills. Candice, last word to you then. LSIPs, sector labour market intelligence, you know, you're a previous sector skills council, you capture this kind of occupational data as well, but how do we make it useful data? I'm thinking here in terms of careers advice, because one thing to say, yes, you know, the green economy, the green industrial revolution is just around the corner, but there's quite another to make sure we're signaling that to the, you know, particularly young people who haven't yet even joined the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think you're signalling to ears that are wide open and listening, because the majority of the young people that I have any connection with, they are already asking their employers, what are we doing about sustainability? How are we doing this? So I genuinely believe we've got a real opportunity here. I think it's very much that combination of pathways which says these are the things that you need to worry about. The bottom line for most organizations now is threefold. It's about environmental, it's about people, and it's about finance, and it's all those elements, and we need to be building that in to the thinking that goes on at school level education. We need to make sure that LSIPs are focused on it, because there will be a really strong vehicle for providing local career advice. And actually, if you think about where the public sector will fit within the LSIP, they are amongst the biggest employers in that area, so they will have a voice. Now, if you think about just health, if you were to take health across the globe, it probably would come out as about the fifth largest CO2 emitter on the planet if it was if it was a country. So I think there'll be a lot of attention on this naturally that will happen. And I think the career evidence and career information that needs to flow is also a good idea that happens relatively locally, because then it's got that whole place-based environment around it.
Yeah, indeed. Last time I checked, the National Health Service, I think, was the 4th largest employer in the world after the Chinese People's Army. So
Certainly the biggest in the whole of Europe.
Yeah, indeed, a massive employer. Well, look, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for our low carbon interview that's taking place over the digital airwaves. But Candice Miller, SFJ Awards, and Andy Durman of Emsi and Burning Glass. Thanks so much for joining Skills World Live today.
Thank you.
Thank you.